Welcome back to my channel. I'm Angela and we are making sourdough naan bread. The night before, I am getting ready the Levain. The Levain uses some of our active starter, incorporates some water and flour. This particular recipe also has us adding sugar. This is a pre-ferment using the active starter. This way we don't need a whole lot of our starter. So if you are somebody who uses a lot of discard, perhaps maybe you forgot to feed your starter extra and you don't seem to have a lot, the Levain helps to take a small amount of starter to use towards a loaf of bread perhaps that would need a rather large rise. So this ferments for 12 hours. So just do it the night before. It stays on the countertop, or like what I do is I put it in the oven with the light on. You don't turn the oven on, but I put it in with just the light on, and that keeps that warm environment, which is perfect for something like this. 74 to 76 degrees is what is recommended. You will need 70 grams of white flour, 14 grams of superfine sugar, 70 grams of water, 28 grams of active sourdough starter at 100% hydration. The following day is where we make the remaining part of our dough, and this recipe does use milk. So if you'd like to test it out using a milk alternative, let me know how it turns out. I do have some individuals in my family who prefer not to have dairy. It just doesn't settle with them very well. I could use a lactose-free milk. However, those individuals weren't having dinner with us that night, so I just used my powdered milk. I use that for everything. We're going to incorporate 468 grams of white flour, 193 grams of whole milk, 43 grams of a neutral flavored oil. I use pure olive oil, 54 grams of water, 11 grams of fine sea salt. I use Redmond's real salt, and then we will add our Levain. The recipe I'm using, I will have down below for you, does only provide measurements in weight. It is recommended with baking in general, but very in particularly with your sourdough recipes, it is recommended to weigh out your ingredients. You get the best outcome when you do it that way. And with my liquid ingredients, I go very, very slow. With my water, I was going drop by drop there towards the end. It's much easier to remove some dry ingredients if you over measure. It's not so easy to remove that liquid. So just go slow and take your time. This recipe does recommend you use a KitchenAid mixer with the dough hook attachment. I decided that felt like a little too much work. I didn't want to continue dirtying up additional dishes, so I used my Swedish dough whisk in the beginning, and then I just went in with my hands and kneaded it. Not a whole lot of sourdough recipes will call for you to actually knead the dough. It tends to be way too hydrated for that. However, this recipe, tortillas, they tend to be definitely on the more drier scale, and you can work with it much easier. I did not incorporate the oil just yet. That's going to be drizzled in towards the end. We are going to work this dough for 2 to 3 minutes if it were in a stand mixer. So basically by hand, I'm just waiting for it to look semi-smooth. And once that happens, we're going to slowly drizzle in our oil. So I do just a little bit at a time, working it in, getting it incorporated after each drizzle. Once everything is combined, we are going to have a bulk ferment for 4 hours. We are going to perform one set of stretch and folds after the first hour of the bulk ferment. So once we get everything incorporated, I set it aside. After 1 hour, you will see I come back and I do my first and only set for this recipe of a stretch and fold. And then I just let it sit for another 3 hours in a warm environment. I was doing some other cooking and baking this day, so my oven was on. On top of my stovetop was a very warm place, and that's just where it sat for the remaining 3 hours until I was ready. The dough should look smooth, a little glossy. It will be very soft to the touch, but it will not be sticky. The stretches are not super stretchy. It is a little bit of a tougher dough from my experience. I don't know if that's normal, but that is what I was experiencing. I do feel like the recipe turned out fantastic, so I'm going to wager a bet that if that's what you're experiencing, it will still turn out just fine. I am going to flour my sheet pan here. It's been 3 hours. I can see that the dough has grown, which is a great sign. It's a very nice dough. This was really fun to work with. We're going to separate it into 8 pieces. You're going to roll them into a ball. I did measure. I just was wanting them to be semi-uniform. You don't have to do that though. And I let it sit on the floured sheet pan covered with plastic wrap for 30 minutes before we move on to the next step. We are going to get a dry skillet heated on the stovetop, and you're going to sort of perform a stretch and pull in a circular motion, kind of like you would with a pizza dough. This dough really did not require us to go in with a rolling pin like you would with a tortilla. It really stretched out quite beautifully, and I just kept working at the ends to kind of flatten that dough out a little bit more. Mine are never perfectly round. That's never my goal. I just want them to taste very yummy. That's my only goal. The first one that you do of anything, whether it's a tortilla, a pancake, or a crepe, the first ones never turn out as well. As your pan continues to heat up, and the more that you make, the better they turn out. You will start to see that these will actually start to bubble. They brown up. You're doing 2 minutes per side, and you are going to cover these. You want the steam to activate within that naan bread, and that's going to help cook everything in there. These were fantastic. I really recommend, if you have sourdough and you're looking for some new ways to use your starter without making bread, this is a wonderful option. These turned out amazing. As I cooked them, I kept them warm in a towel, just like I would tortillas. These were really flexible. They were very soft. They were a little chewy. They were just fantastic. I did end up freezing a few, so I'm curious to see how they turn out once I re-warm them on the stovetop after being frozen. But in the moment, they were phenomenal. I really recommend these. They were rather simple, a little couple extra steps, but it wasn't anything too hard. So I hope you give this a try. If you do, let me know how it turns out for you. And I'll see you the next time I'm in my kitchen. Take care.